Hi, I'm Cailey, a librarian here at Mentor Public Library.
And I'm Meg, also a librarian, and welcome to this week's edition of All Booked Up with Cailey and Meg, where each time we give you different book recommendations on a specific theme. Today, Cailey and I are going to be looking at family sagas. So families, those things that give us love and delight, and maybe sometimes pain and strife, depending on the circumstance. So either way, we have our families and we have amazing stories to share about them.
Yes, and all of the books that we're going to talk about today are available for you here at the library, as well as online with your library card through Libby and Hoopla.
All right, Cailey, what is your first family saga book?
So my first one is called Before We Visit the Goddess by Chitra, Banerjee, Divakaruni. This is a title I read a few years back and it really stuck with me. This book follows 3 generations of women, Savitri, Bella, and Tara. Savitri, who lives in India, is contacted by her daughter, Bella, in the United States, and Bella's panicking because her daughter, Tara, wants to quit college. And so begins this story. We learn all about Savitri's life and struggles as the bright daughter of a poor man in India. Despite her wish for an education, she struggles due to her place in society. And just when things look like they may work out for her, a misstep really changes everything in her life and winds up throwing her back into where she was. Bella, who is Savitri's daughter, fulfills some of her mother's dreams for education, but flees India for the allure of America with her love and, where things are just not what she expected. Tara is reckless, confused, as a first-generation American, unsure of what she really wants and what expectations she can fulfill and what are just too high for her. And these 3 women just have a lot more in common than they think, and definitely more than they'd like to admit. This book is largely about the complexity of mothers and daughters, and each woman really struggles with finding their own place in the world and feeling satisfied with where they end up. They push and pull on one another, much like, mothers and daughters in the real world do. But they need each other as well. And there's different stages in life where they need each other in different ways. And it really develops throughout. And I love the way that this book shows so many different types of paths that these women can take, yet still have that foundation that ties them together. It's realistic and very uniquely told and quite relatable. The book is not necessarily told in a linear way. It bounces around a little bit, and it's more sort of vignettes of their lives, short stories that sort of all interconnect throughout to give you a larger picture of these 3 women and their family.
Oh, lovely. A lovely start for our family sagas. I love the point you make about the similarities families can bear, even, without consciously noticing it, whether it's looks or personality or life choices. And those 3 women, they sound like a good core for a novel just to describe their relationship and the choices they make. So sounds fantastic. My next one stays within modern day England, and it's called The Shell Seekers by Rosamunde Pilcher. And it tells a story of a family matriarch, Penelope Keeling, and the decision she must make regarding a family heirloom. So at the end, she's 64 years old, and she's kind of assessing her possessions in life and what she's wanting to keep or do with certain things. But her most prized possession is a painting called The Shell Seekers, which was painted by her father. And it symbolizes her unconventional life, beginning with her bohemian childhood in Cornwall, England, to a fascinating wartime romance that she had. So she has a lot of emotional attachment to this specific piece of art. However, when her 3 children discover that this painting is worth a fortune, her children have very differing opinions about what exactly to do with this. So her two oldest children, Nancy and Noel, they really want her to sell it for different reasons. Nancy, as the oldest child, she is very concerned with appearances, and she thinks the money could help them, fix up some of their family financial issues and things like that. Whereas Noel, he has more of a personal financial issues. He's kind of been the layabout of the family, so he kind of needs them to sell it. But then there's the youngest, Olivia, who takes after her mother the most and seems to understand her mother's emotional attachment to the painting the most. So the story kind of like the first story you mentioned covers a few eras, whereas it goes to Penelope's childhood in wartime Cornwall, England, and then goes to modern day with her children. And the interaction between the three siblings is very compelling. And just the decision, ultimately, it's Penelope's decision what to do with this family heirloom. And I think that's a relatable thing because, what do you do with the things that your family leaves behind and what is their significance? So I thought it was compelling for that reason.
Oh, that sounds very interesting. And that's definitely, I can understand that whole, what do we do with this thing that actually is worth some money
Right.
idea? Because I think we've seen that before in literature and movies where, something sentimental actually has real value. Suddenly
Yes.
it's looked at in a different way.
Right.
Yeah. Well, my next one starts off back in the 60s, 70s, and moves forward into modern day as well. And this is called Ask Again, Yes by Mary Beth Keane. This is a newer book, came out just within the last year, I think. And this is the story of two interwoven families, the Gleasons and the Stanhopes. Francis Gleason and Brian Stanhope work together as New York City cops. And they're first friends, and then they become next door neighbors. And their lives become very interwoven through this proximity as they do. They have children that are born just 6 months apart from each other, Kate and Pete, who become instant best friends. Kate Gleason and Pete Stanhope are inseparable. They are first fast friends, and this sort of turns into a young love for them. But when Kate and Pete are about 14, tragedy strikes, and it affects both families and rips apart the young couple, changing the families forever. Years later, the two reconnect, rekindling their relationship, but it brings up old ghosts and memories and, what really happened in that incident and how that really changed both of their lives and how it led them to where they are. And this really tests the strength of their relationship over and over again for many years. So it's hard to talk about without giving too much away, but this book is really a lot about like the power of secrets in families, especially in this case, two interwoven families, and how those secrets have affected the children who were raised there. It's talks a lot about love and how that can endure despite these things and what can be tested with it. And it's goes over like a 40-year journey over 3 generations throughout the course of this novel. And it's really an intense family saga. It's like the epitome of what we think of when we think of family saga.
Right. Wow. Sounds great. And I love how, when I think no matter how old you get, it feels like the families you grow up with seem to leave that lasting mark. Like you just
Absolutely.
it's an indelible mark. So I find that fascinating where it's more than one family and the connections they make. And also a little bit of romance. I like that too. So with our family sagas, I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my last family saga, kind of like you were saying, seems like quintessential, like what is the word they use? Sweeping family saga. This one, my next one definitely seems to fill that bill. And it's called Cutting for Stone by Abraham Verghese. Have you read this one?
I've heard of it. I know that it was very popular.
Yes, yeah. So it came out about a decade ago, but still an indelible favorite. So it starts out in the 1940s about Sister Mary Joseph Praise, a devout young nun, is traveling to a mission hospital in Ethiopia during war-torn Ethiopian times. And along the way, she saves the life of an English doctor by the name of Thomas Stone. So she kind of saves his life, and they kind of have a little bit of a spark after that. But nothing happens. It's like a kind of a slow burning thing between them until 7 years later, they have a, what's called like an accidental little tryst, like they didn't really mean to necessarily. and of course, she becomes pregnant with twins. And then to add to the drama, she dies in childbirth, and he is the doctor who tried to deliver it. So of course he is distraught, and so distraught that he actually flees for America, and he is not to be seen for 30 years. So these two twin boys, Marianne and Shiva, they're actually raised by a married couple who worked at the same hospital as Sister Mary and Thomas. So they're raised by them, and pretty much the rest of the story is about these two brothers and the different paths their lives take. They actually both decide to follow in the family's footsteps of the medical profession, but it's a really interesting study of the difference between talent versus opportunity. I won't spoil too much, but there's a difference there in between, the skill levels and kind of the choices they make and the opportunities they have. And there's also a little bit of a love triangle. They have the two brothers grow up with their best friend, Gane, and I won't spoil much, but just to say there are some interesting interactions between the three of them. So it's definitely, as I said, sweeping. It really, if you like those like medical dramas too, honestly, it's like a sweeping family medical drama is maybe how I would describe it. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I think you will enjoy this book.
Excellent. Yeah, I honestly, I don't know that I've actually heard what that book was about, just that I know it was quite popular, like you said, about 10 years ago or so, and it was like we couldn't keep it on the shelves at the library.
Right.
So it's one of those ones that's always been sort of in the back of my mind, like I know about it just a little bit, so it's good to hear a little bit more to entice me to jump into another family saga.
Exactly. Give it a chance. All right, great. So thank you guys so much for joining us for this week's edition of All Booked Up. We hope you got interested and maybe pulled in by some of these unique family sagas. Maybe they'll be made into a TV series one day, so maybe get a jump on that and read the book first. So
thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Happy reading.